Because can you imagine when you bring in so many people and you do not properly integrate them into society, all right? Hey, you bring in foreigners. It doesn't mean foreign talent is great, all right? There is a difference in culture. There is a difference in identity. And after a while, what happens? Society splinters. Now, Lee Kuan Yew recognized this in the 80s and the 90s. But it is a sad fact that today, his successors don't. And they can only tell you about how great foreign talent is. You know, my fellow Singaporeans, we have wonderful Singaporean talent going to waste here, driving taxis. Yeah. Instead of making our country stronger and more solid, the PAP is bringing in huge numbers of foreigners. Very soon, I am told, in fact, at this point in time, already if you take into account the new citizens, about 55% of our workforce are foreign born. In 1990, the number of foreign born residents in Singapore made up about 19%. No, sorry, about 24% of the population. In 2020, that number had gone up to 43%. 19% relative increase in 3 decades. With a TFR of 1.12, and if not for people like Hui Hui who are still, fighting the tide, very soon, my fellow Singaporeans, locally born Singaporeans are going to be in the minority. And we should not be celebrating that.
Hui Hui, Lim Tian has just talked about foreign talent. Wow, and then your baby unity will start making noise already. Now, in the social media, people are talking about broken promises. One of the broken promises is what Tian has just mentioned. And I read this to you. The broken promise that over the years, repeatedly the same narrative, that foreign talent will bring more and better jobs for Singaporeans. What are your thoughts on this?
So there was this time whereby countries get invaded, and when countries get invaded, those richer people will come and sprinkle those rice and bread, and they throw it out, and the people literally have to go pick them up from the street in the past. So this is how Singapore government is behaving right now. It's like they say that we will take care of you, we will give you CDC voucher, GST voucher, and then we are helping you to make sure that you can survive, and our taxes will be nothing compared to it. But if you calculate properly, right, the amount of money that they get from GST is so much higher, it makes up majority of the government's budget. So that is the first issue. So they are actually taking money from all the poor people, because if they really wanted to tax the rich people, they can just directly go and tax the rich people. Instead of saying that, okay, I'm going to give you money, I'm going to give you voucher. So the thing is like, imagine you are a cripple, okay? Imagine you can walk properly. Then the government can't beat out your 2 legs, cut it off. Then you become a cripple. They say, oh look, I'm going to give you a wheelchair, I'm going to give you crutches, You shouldn't beat out and cut off my 2 legs in the first place. So this is what the government is doing. They give you this GST increase, which is way more than the GST voucher and the CDC voucher combined. And they say that, oh, we are helping the people. They are not helping the people. They are the ones who are making the life of the people hard in the first place.
And also, I find it so ridiculous. You take away from one hand and you purport to give with the other, with vouchers. What are the administrative costs involved, all right, in all these voucher programs and all that? Yeah. What is the point? And my friends, the other thing is this. We know that GST is a regressive tax. It hurts the poor and the lower income a lot more than the upper, middle, and the rich, who hardly feel the pinch. Now, why should the poor and the lower income have greater difficulty now affording the basic necessities in life? Food, books, for their children at school, things like that. In many countries which have VAT, which is the equivalent of the GST, all right? In countries like England, you don't have the VAT on essential items in life, like food. I'm telling you, if PV is in government, we will not have GST on essential items. All right? The expenditure of this government has just gone ballistic. Lee Kuan Yew used to boast that he ran a very lean and trim government. I still remember him uttering those words in the 80s. You look at our government today, all right? You look at the bureaucracy, yeah? You look at the number of ministers, minister of state, you know. When I was living in Indonesia in the 2010s, and even before that, I found out that Indonesia had a few coordinating ministers. All right? And why do you need coordinating ministers? You need coordinating with ministers when the country is huge, when the ministries are unwieldy, when you have many ministries. So you need ministers to coordinate, because otherwise every ministry goes off and does its own thing. You need a minister to coordinate so as to adhere to the national agenda and the policy. You fast track a few years down. I come back to Singapore, and you know what? All of a sudden we have 3 coordinating ministers as well. Why do you need that? Why? For a population of 6 million compared to Indonesia, which has a population of at least 275 million. Well, that's official. I always believe that the population of Indonesia is closer to 400 million. All right? So, you know, our bureaucracy has gone out of whack. And then they spend money on all these white elephant projects. Yeah, the National Stadium. You know, they spend 900 million on a media that can't even survive and support itself. Yeah, has to go cap in hand to the public. And the public has to spend 180 million on them for 5 years. And you don't even know whether after 5 years they can survive, or whether they'll still come cap in hand to you. So they're fine. They're fine doing all these projects which suit the ruling party, but they neglect the Singapore talent. All right? They neglect the basics of a society, such as building up a strong Singapore core, such as making sure that Singaporeans reproduce themselves. And every day, you're inundated with this narrative. Oh, without foreign talent, we can't survive. What total rubbish. You know, I think the golden age of Singapore was in the 1980s, when we were respected, when we were a fast-growing nation. Did we have foreign talent? We may have had a sprinkling. But Singapore from the 60s, from the 50s to the 80s was built up with Singapore talent. All right?
Hui Hui, I like your analogy. Cripple you and then say give you a wheelchair to help you.
Actually, to add on to just now what Tian said when he was in UK, right? So because I was very scared because first thing is it was very difficult for me to get pregnant, and then when we tried, we didn't get pregnant. Then we were like, okay, even if we get pregnant, I may not be able to hold the baby. So for my first pregnancy, I was in UK for a fellowship during the pregnancy, and when I go for checkup, they actually handed me information sheets, and they were like,